Guyana's Attorney General defends government amid claims that business is being severely hampered as a result of delayed elections. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Tuesday, August 6th. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Dawn Paris. Good evening. Attorney General Basil Williams has denied allegations that the Guyana government's failure to set a date for general and regional elections is hurting business in the country. He defended the government during a panel discussion on the implications of the Caribbean Court of Justice's ruling on the business climate in Guyana on Monday evening. The CCJ ruled on June 18th that the no-confidence motion passed against the government in December last year was valid, and elections must therefore be held within 3 months, and that 3-month deadline starting from the date of the CCJ ruling is September 18th. But no date has yet been announced, as the David Granger administration is awaiting the completion of a house-to-house registration process being undertaken by the Ghana Elections Commission, GCOM, to compile a new voters list. During the panel discussion hosted by the American Chamber of Commerce, former Speaker of the National Assembly, Ralph Ramkaran, and People's Progressive Party executive and former Attorney General Anil Nandlao charged that business is being stymied because of the delay. That view was supported by some members of the business community in attendance, including President of the Quarantine Chamber of Commerce, Mohamed Rafiq, who charged that business has gone down by 30 to 35% in Berbice. But the Attorney General dismissed the claims as fake information.
Guyana is the fastest growing of 5 fastest growing countries in the world, our economy. And we are not saying as a government, you know who said that. And so all of this doomsday sayings and utterances that we have about our government, I don't know where it's coming from. But you cannot be the fastest growing economy in the world and you're saying that there's a downturn in our economy. All of the business that is being given out in connection with oil and gas, all that spending is impacting the economy. And therefore, it is fallacious to allege that there's a downturn in business.
But Nandlao insisted that business is bad and will only get worse if elections are delayed past September 18th, which he said puts the country in a constitutional crisis.
No prudent investor will invest in a country where the government is unlawful, where the government disobeys the Constitution and the laws of the land, and disregards its own court's decision.
A man has been arrested in connection with the robbery of 3 employees of GCOM as they carried out house-to-house registration on Sunday. The robbery was the latest attack on GCOM enumerators. We get more in this report from Newsroom's Bibi Katoon.
The persons were robbed of their personal belongings along with registration forms and other documents belonging to GCOM at Covent Garden, East Bank, Demerara. The enumerators were reportedly attacked by a male armed with a knife while they were conducting the house-to-house registration exercise. GCOM's public relations officer Yolanda Ward told the newsroom that all of the items were recovered on the same day and the suspect was arrested. Following threats to its employees, GCOM on Wednesday last said it is seeking police protection for its officers. Ward said the commission is still engaged in the Ghana Police Force on the matter, but whenever reports are made, the police promptly act on those reports. The house-to-house registration began on July 20th and is set to conclude on October 20th.
Staying in Guyana, public hearings by the Commission of Inquiry set up to probe the fatal attacks on Guyanese fishermen in Suriname last year have started. On April 27, 2018, 4 boats carrying a total of 20 people were attacked off the coast of Suriname and more than a dozen fishermen killed. During his testimony at the public hearings, the chairman of the Quarantine Fishermen's Cooperative Society recommended compensation and protection for victims of pirate attacks. We get more in this NCN News report.
Chairman of the number 66 fishery, Parmeshwar Jainarine, took to the stand on Monday and spoke of the challenges facing fishermen across the quarantine. According to Jainarine, one of the main issues affecting the fishing industry in Berbice is a lack of adequate security. Chairman of the COI, Rishi Thakur, spoke with NCN News.
Some of the questions Mr. Wade raised about the difficulty in policing the river for our fishermen, and that's not been resolved. It will be, or probably will take, I don't know how it can or will be. As the gentleman who was speaking this morning, the chairman of the co-op, made it clear that there was an agreement in place some years ago, about 15 years ago, when in fact the fishermen at the co-op were issued license to go out and fish and depend on the security of the Surinamese security forces to protect them from piracy. That is when, quote unquote, the piracy kicked up.
Thakur disclosed that outside of the COI, he met with several fishermen who had genuine concerns but are afraid to present themselves to the commission because of their fear of victimization. Secretary of the Commission, Darren Wade, agreed that the fear of retaliation is preventing fishermen who might have valuable information from testifying at the COI.
Persons, because a lot of persons are afraid to come forward and so forth because of fear of retaliation. So the chairman have been meeting with persons to get information and so on.
There's a fear that still lingers?
Yes, as the evidence suggested before the chairman of the quarantine co-op stated that a lot of the persons want to come give evidence in court because whenever done they have to go back at sea and they were afraid these men are out there and many of times the judicial process is slow and so forth. He mentioned one incident whereby it happened in 2015 and the matter is still before the courts, so that's also contributed to the fear of retaliation and so forth.
The president of the Prison Officers Association in Trinidad and Tobago is alleging a high-level cover-up in the aftermath of the 2015 Port of Spain jailbreak. Ciron Richards leveled the charge as he noted that 4 years after the incident, there has still been no police or prison investigation. He was speaking on TV6's Morning Edition program. We get more in this report from Renessa Cutting.
Richards claims that high-ranking officials of the prison service, public service and the judicial system conspired and masterminded to cover up the 2015 jailbreak, adding that the country was informed that investigations were done, but this was not the case.
The Director of Public Prosecution said and corrected us by saying, no, there's no police investigation report. So we are here 4 years after without any report from the prison and the police. But you know what is significant and strange in that? We have 3 officers charged.
Richards alleges that this was done for political reasons.
Remember, around the corner was a national election. And the public needed answers. And there's a propensity for quick responses by politicians to feed the public and calm them down.
He says the officers sought redress by way of a Freedom of Information request, but to no avail.
It went all the way to the court under Justice Honeywell, and in a conclusion, if you read a conclusion, right, the person who they said investigated jailbreak 2015, Justice Honeywell said, no, that couldn't have been the person. And the extent to which Justice Honeywell could not extract from the prison service the report into the investigation.
He adds the public deserves to know the truth.
The number of dengue cases in Belize continues to rise, with a significant jump in the past week, which has put the figure at almost 800. Fortunately, though, Director of Health Services Dr. Marvin Manzanero says there have been no deaths so far.
Yes, we do have an increase actually from the preliminary data we have managed to take out. We have 789 confirmed cases, which would be a 10% increase average from what we reported exactly 1 week ago, with the Cayo district now having a higher increase in terms of numbers. So they are behind Corozal, the second highest number in terms of total cases. And we also have an increase, particularly in the pediatric population. We were asked last week about mortality cases. We don't have any. In Belize, we are aware of a couple of severe cases at Karl Hirschner, and we have 49 of those, total 789 cases that are considered to be severe cases of dengue.
Still to come, the St. Lucia government gives the go-ahead for a marijuana commission. Stay with us.
When you think of what we went through with Hurricane Irma, you had to be able to recognize what are the things we need to do to cope with the aftermath. The psychological trauma, to me, is probably the most telling on a lot of people.
Preparedness is the key. So when people are prepared, when people have what their resources in terms of how they can cope with the disaster, they're better able to be able to return to their normal life. They're better able to make decisions that are informed for themselves and for their family, and then for their community. Be ready. Look, listen, and link.
Really thinly sliced and being placed on a grid, a wire grid here. So they are preparing that for some sort of fancy cooking, I'm sure, here from the Cayman Islands. And this is the most critical round. This is the grand final. This is where you get it all once you win. This is where you want to bring out your very best game and get everything. All your flavors must be right. Your cooking techniques must be spot on. The three teams are very, very close together going in.
Welcome back. The St. Lucia government has given the nod for the re-establishment of a marijuana commission. Commerce Minister Bradley Felix said the commission's mandate will be to consult and provide advice on the design of a legislative and regulatory framework for cannabis. We get more in this Choice News report.
With cannabis decriminalization continuing to be a topic of discussion and contention in St. Lucia, the Minister of Commerce, Industry, Investment and Enterprise Development provided us with an update on St. Lucia's most recent activity in that regard.
You would have been aware that, I think it was January 2018 or 2017, 2018, a commission was mandated to look into the whole cannabis sector. Unfortunately, that commission made very little progress. As a Minister of Investment, we saw an opportunity, particularly in terms of the medicinal value and what is happening globally now with the cannabis sector. We saw an opportunity to improve on our GDP and the significant potential that we could have if we, to begin to look at this sector.
As such, he says that the government of the day found it fitting to re-establish a cannabis commission.
We are looking to aggressively go forward in doing what is called public consultation. A budget has been approved, and the commission will be going around the island. They've been given a time frame of about 3 months to go and come back to the government with advice and the results of that public consultation.
We sought to understand the rationale behind tasking a new body with this role, wondering whether we were not simply stalling for time, given that CARICOM had convened a similar commission and provided a lengthy report on their findings.
We have not done that sort of public consultation in St. Lucia, one. In fact, some people may say that we are late, but I think there are lots of lessons that we will have learned from the laws that have already been established in other CARICOM states. There are lots of lessons to be learned.
Felix says that using other countries' laws without facilitating consultation in St. Lucia is not a good way to go.
People believe that current laws on cannabis are ineffective. People believe they're discriminatory. People believe they violate human rights. We also have the issue of a number of young men who are applying to work on farms in Canada, and as a result of having a police record to deal with having had a joint in their possession, because of that police record, they're unable to get the opportunity to go and work on the farms.
According to Felix, this presents another issue. He says that if laws aren't modified, St. Lucians who work on cannabis farms overseas may not be able to repatriate money to St. Lucia since it would be considered illegal. Felix did not, however, mention any action on the part of Cabinet or the Attorney General to draft legislation to address this issue.
Staying in St. Lucia, the government says it has entered negotiations with other airlines, even as it leaves the door open for talks with Virgin Atlantic, which has threatened to stop servicing the island from next year. Prime Minister Alan Chastanet says he's hoping there can be an amicable solution to the impasse with Virgin, but his administration is already looking at an alternative strategy. Chastanet said he will be leading a delegation to London early next month, and the intention is to meet with British Airways and some of the other carriers to build on preliminary discussions they've had, which he said have gone well. Virgin Atlantic had approached the St. Lucia government for a subsidy of $2.5 million for 3 years, but the Prime Minister said he told the airline that would have been impossible for his government to do. Virgin Atlantic subsequently announced that after June 8, 2020, it would stop operations between St. Lucia and London's Gatwick Airport for the foreseeable future. Tourism Minister Dominique Fidé has confirmed that that decision was linked to the stalemate over the payment of subsidies to the airline. United States President Donald Trump has imposed a total economic embargo on Venezuela. Trump late Monday signed an executive order which states that all property and interest in property of the government of Venezuela that are in the U.S. are blocked and may not be transferred, paid, exported, withdrawn, or otherwise dealt in. The order also bars transactions with Venezuelan authorities whose assets are blocked. This new sanction not only targets the government's assets in the U.S., but also the individuals, companies, and countries doing business with the government. The measure is expected to be far more damaging for Venezuela's economy than previous sanctions. The move is the latest aimed at increasing pressure on President Nicolas Maduro to step down. Meantime, Venezuela has issued a U.S. travel advisory warning of the dangers of visiting that country after 2 mass shootings over the weekend left 31 people dead. The Foreign Ministry issued a statement saying that the recent proliferation of violent acts and hate crimes need to be considered by those planning to travel into the U.S., and it suggests that its citizens postpone travel or even exercise caution when traveling as a result of the events in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. It also warned Venezuelans to avoid large gatherings where mass shootings might occur. Back in April, the U.S. State Department gave Venezuela its highest travel advisory, level 4, do not travel, citing crime, civil unrest, and the arbitrary arrest and detention of U.S. citizens. Ahead in Newsline Sport, West Indies failed to avoid a whitewash at the hands of the Indians in the T20I series. The details when we return.
When the Tobago House of Assembly was re-inaugurated, a seminar on the culture of Tobago was held. Out of the findings of that seminar, the Tobago Heritage Festival was born. A generation has passed, and what has evolved is that once a year, in July, the people of Tobago invite the national population and the world to the Tobago Heritage Festival.
When is the right time to do an offer letter versus an employment agreement? Or do you view both?
Ideally, I would want to see my clients do both, or at least provide an offer letter to everybody. And there's a difference. They're very, very similar documents. The offer letter, however, is more what it sounds like. It indicates the position that you're offering the person. The employment agreement goes into more detail.
The Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency recognizes schools going above and beyond for our veterans, dividing them into 3 elite levels: bronze, silver, and gold. One look at the wall inside the Veterans Service Office at Mock Community College, and you'll know where it stands: gold status. Coordinator David Martin helps incoming students with registration, curriculum, and understanding the GI Bill.
It's just a joy to be able to see somebody use the GI Bill, complete it on time.
If you don't finish telling me this, I'm excited. Tell me.
You know, a lot of times I actually didn't intend on doing meal prep, right?
Right.
I was teaching classes on how to cook the food. So my classes were filling up, and everybody afterwards, of course, I get everybody eat the food. They love the food, especially the lemon chicken and the chicken. It was wanted more than like the salmon I would teach them how to make with oil, right?
Okay.
Everyone loved it.
Time for sports now. A half-century from Kieron Pollard was not enough to save West Indies from defeat in the third and final T20 match at the Ghana National Stadium on Tuesday. India won the match by 7 wickets to sweep the series 3-0. Pollard's first T20 international in 7 years helped steer the home side to 146 for 6 off 20 overs. Rovman Powell made 32 not out. After the match, Captain Carlos Brathwaite praised the team's performance, but said there is still more work to be done.
You know, you start we wanted with the bat again, but kudos to Polly. Very, very well played. Bowling-wise, I think we put our hands up. We tried hard enough. I guess personally, been letting down the team, so that's something I need to get in order as quickly as possible. But I think as a team, we talk about progress, and that progress showed again today. We took it right into the last over. We didn't think 140 was par, a little bit below par, but the bowlers fought again. I think the track in Florida wasn't the most conducive to good stroke play in the first game. In the second game, we thought we set the game up well, probably a little too much than we wanted to have in the last 4 overs, but we preferred that scenario. I think today we consolidated well and finished well as well. So it's a matter for the top 3 to continue to play the way they're playing, make smarter decisions, and we know that once any of them get off, that they can take us from the 140s we've been getting to 180, 190.
India scored 150 for 3 off 19.1 overs. Rishabh Pant top scored with 65 not out, followed by captain Virat Kohli with 59, while Kohli hailed his team's clinical performance.
Very clinical performance again. I mean, we set out to get the result that we wanted. As we said, we're going to try a couple of players, but the priority is to win games. And, you know, Deepak stepping in did a tremendous job with the new ball. Bhuvi professional as always, and I think all the bowlers were on the mark. This was a much better wicket than what we played in Miami, so the batsmen had a bit in it to, you know, take out of the wicket, and West Indies got to a decent total because of how the wicket played as well. But I think in the field and with the ball, we are again professional, and then finishing off with the bat also.
Well, the International Cricket Council, ICC, has fined Kieron Pollard 20% of his match fee after finding him guilty of disobeying umpires' instructions during the second T20I in Florida last weekend. They also slapped him with 1 demerit point. Players can be banned if they have 4 demerit points within 2 years. The sanction came after Pollard ignored the umpire's repeated instructions not to call a substitute player onto the field without first making a request. The umpires advised him to wait until the end of the next over, but he did not comply. The 22-year-old denied the charge, but he was found guilty at a hearing attended by ICC match referee Jeff Crow. West Indies lost that match by 22 runs under Duckworth Lewis Stern after rain halted their pursuit of India's 168 at the Central Broward County Stadium. Well, Trinidadian umpire Joe Wilson has found himself at the center of a firestorm of criticism after his error-filled display in the opening Ashes test at Edgbaston, where he equaled the record for the most overturned decisions in a match. The 52-year-old was appointed to the ICC's elite panel of umpires only last week, but he did little to enhance his reputation with 8 decisions which were overturned by DRS during the contest, which Australia won by 251 runs on Monday. Legendary former Australia leg spinner Shane Warne described Wilson's officiating, along with that of his standing partner Aleem Dar of Pakistan, as horrific from ball one. Former Australia captain Ricky Ponting said the umpire's performance highlighted a need for a rethink by the ICC on the use of neutral umpires. Wilson also had a decision overturned on days 2, 3, and 4 before England captain Joe Root twice successfully challenged decisions in the space of 29 balls on the final day to take the officials' tally to 8. He joined Sri Lankan Kumar Damarasina and Indian Sundaram Ravi, who previously shared the unwanted record. Wilson will serve as television umpire for the second test at Lord's starting next Wednesday, and he will stand in the third test at Headingley, bowling off on August 22nd. Wilson is one of the Caribbean's leading umpires, and he has officiated in 14 tests, 63 one-day internationals, and 26 T20 internationals. And that's the sport. We'll be right back.
When IndyCar hauled to Motown, Honda hoping to keep the good times rolling. Honda's IndyCar stars had swept the previous 2 Motor City doubleheaders. Graham Rahal doubling in 2017. Ryan Hunter-Reay and Scott Dixon splitting the wins a year ago. This year, Mother Nature controlled Saturday. Severe weather delaying the start nearly 2 hours, causing the event to be shortened. Still wet when the green finally came out.
All right, guys, and look here. Now, I've started off with models. I started off with musicians. And now, guys, I have a designer with me, Mr. Enrique himself, right? Did I say it right?
Enrico.
Oh, I got to go back because I always mess up on it. Enrico.
Yeah, Enrique is Mexican.
It is Mexican. You're right. So where's Enrico from?
Italy. But I was born in Africa, raised in Paris.
Where were you born at in Africa?
Togo.
Nice.
Are we already doing this? Oh,
Well, my family is Gambian. So
oh
that's
yeah.
why I
I lived in Bonjour.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
Now we're ready to show the world who we are. Shine a light so everyone could see our identity. See the way we do what we do. When we bring our cultures together, we make each other better. Carry Festa. Carry Festa. Carry Festa 14, Trinidad and Tobago.
A recap of the day's top stories. Guyana's Attorney General Basil Williams dismisses claims that government's failure to set a date for general and regional elections is hurting business in the country. And in sport, West Indies failed to avoid a whitewash at the hands of India in the T20I series. And that's Caribbean Newsline. Join us again tomorrow. Have a good night.